So since some of the videos on this channel are actually getting some views for detecting counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards, I decided to make this video to explain essentially why I'm making all these videos. And if you look at my history on this channel, I'm all over the place. I just make whatever videos I want and I upload them. And this channel is not going to become how to detect counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards forever. I've got a list of different methods that either I've seen applied or would like to apply to detecting counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards, and I'd like to make the videos to go along with them. But after that's done, I intend to entirely step out of the picture. And I have maybe 2 or 3 other Magic the Gathering related videos that I want to put together. But other than that, I'm just sticking to this list. And the hope was originally that I would come up with a different video every week. And the unfortunate truth is some of these tests that have never been done are taking thousands of samples in order to develop nice guidelines to determine if they work or not. So it's just taking a lot longer than I thought it would. So that's where this video comes in. I wanted to kind of go over what tests I am going to try, what tests I have already tried, what tests I'm working on, and just kind of a disclaimer before I get into this, you know, why look for proxy Magic the Gathering cards, fake Magic the Gathering cards, counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards. And, you know, I'm not making this video to call your friends out in your local play group. I'm not making this video, you know, to embarrass anyone, you know, that might not have the money for these cards. You know, it's up to your group if you're going to accept these kind of things. What I'm making these videos for is for the people that, you know, they've worked hard for their money, they've gone out and they're purchasing this card with the intention of not just purchasing the ability to play the card, but the history along with that card. And I think that's one of the coolest things about this game. That if you buy a card from Unlimited, you can imagine there was at one time this card in a pack, someone buying this pack of cards, you know, 20 some odd years ago, opening this up, pulling out this fresh Mox Ruby or something, and that card has since been passed on and all these people have played with it. And it's the same thing that goes along with any antique or anything that has a collectible value. You know, you've got this history to it, especially these early sets where people didn't realize they were going to be worth money. So that's what you're purchasing here, and the purpose of all this is to authenticate that, to make sure that no one is spoiling that and trying to rip you off, because that's what they're doing if they're trying to pass off a counterfeit card as an actual card and you buy it. So let's just go through. Let's start out with the test that I've already done. So I did a video on the UV test, you know, shining a UV light on a card, also looking at the UV pass-through, which is something that I hadn't heard of before. I've done videos on the IR test, which is a new test that I came up with, and I use this IR modified camera. I did it myself. You have to use an incandescent light source for that, and essentially the black dot on the back of the card for all of the non-counterfeit cards that I've seen actually is white under infrared light. And for all the counterfeit cards, it's actually black, so that's a pretty good tell. I've done a thickness test where I use a caliper to determine the thickness of the card. Authentic cards are between 0.29 to 0.32 millimeters in thickness. I've done a weight test where I use a little scale and I try to measure the weight of these things. And authentic cards vary by set, I found out. It originally seen numbers 1.7 to 1.8 grams online, but actually in practice some of the sets like Mercadian Masks are a lot heavier. Alpha Beta Unlimited does tend to follow that weight though. So those are the big tests that I've already done. One of the things that I'd like to do then is to go over what's in progress. So basically the big one that's taking all of my time right now is the light test. Now normally light test, you take a flashlight, you shine it through the back of the card and boom, you're done. You compare it to another card, you get to compare and you go, hey, these are from the same set, this one's letting too much light through, this one's not letting enough light through. And the big thing with all these videos is I'm trying to quantify this stuff so that you have a solid number so you can say yes, it passes, no, it fails. So in this case for the light test, I have a lux meter and I've built a rig, and essentially on the inside of the rig is a lux meter over here, and then there's a box containing an LED light, and there's a hole in the box, there's a parabolic reflector in the box, and you put the card there, you turn on the light, you can see a little bit of light through the card, you put down the top of this thing, you can lock it in place, and then you turn on the power to the lux meter and you read out how much light is actually passing through this card. So in order to do all this, I had to, you know, find a standard, basically figure out my own calibration method, and then I've had to look at thousands of cards to find all the patterns, because it's varying by set, it's varying by color of card. It's not varying so much between each print of each card, but it's definitely taking a lot more time than I would have liked. So there's the light test. Another thing I wanted to go into was the bend test, which is, you know, a classic test, but I've never liked the bend test because of the possibility of destroying the card after you've done it too many times. Or let's face it, it actually gets a little destroyed every single time you do this. So instead of a bend test, I was looking at a deflection test. And so I have a rig set up where I can take the card, I can put it on there. And then the thing that's killing me right now is trying to find a standard weight to go on here to look at how much deflection you get. Right now I'm just using this piece of pipe. And that way you're not actually doing the total damage to the card, but a newer card, something that's counterfeit, is going to be more stiff or more pliable. But the problem here again is I have to do this with a lot of cards from a lot of different sets, so this is taking up quite a bit of time. A water test. So they do the water test, you take the card, you get it wet, you see if it raises up around the edges. What I've been doing is I've taken that one step further. I've taken different solvent mixtures, and if you might be able to see this in the reflection, I've been doing this with quite a few different things, but I've been trying to stick to solvents that people can get in their household: isopropyl alcohol, acetone, although I've tried things like hexanes, mineral spirits, strong ethanol. And I've been seeing how much damage, if any damage, they do to the card to see if it's recoverable or if it has no impact. And I'm trying to find the strongest solvents that can be used on the card without damaging an authentic card, but will wreck a fraudulent card. I've had very good luck with this. Completely destroyed fraudulent cards, but completely left real cards untouched, at least to as far as I can see with my eye. So this looks like it's coming along to be a decent test, but again, a lot of sets that you have to test out with this to see if it's completely applicable. Obviously, if for some reason, you know, the dark version of Mirage is susceptible to this, and I stick this out there and say, hey, you might want to give this a try, and someone wrecks a Lion's Eye Diamond, they're not going to be happy, and I'm not going to be happy for failing them. So another test is basically a lot of the time you hear the surface feel of a card. You know, has failed someone, this card doesn't feel right. So I've been trying to quantify that, which is fun and exciting. So essentially they have a test, you do it in physics labs, to determine basically the amount of static friction that something has, and that's that correlates between the surface that's both surfaces. So if you take the same, I've been doing this with a quarter, but I don't have a quarter right here. But if you take the same material and you set it on a different material, and you do this every time, and you see exactly at what angle that material breaks free and starts to slide, you can start to develop, you know, how slippery this is, you know, using a standard. So basically you just put a weight on there. Like I said, I'm using a quarter, and you slowly turn this up. And then at the point that it starts to slide, I would read the angle. And again, a lot of cards. This test isn't working out the best. You know, this is something that would kind of quantify that surface feel that people say. This card feels slippery, this card feels whatever. It's not working out the best. I'm still gathering data, but this is definitely something that I've been looking at. And I tried to break this down even further, because obviously you don't want to be bringing this rig around. I've called it the quarter test, although again it might not ever take off, where I have a stack of cards, you know, 20 cards. I have a spot to place a quarter on those cards, and you basically push down one end like a lever and lift it up, and if that quarter moves, it's fake. If it stays, it's authentic. Again, that's also susceptible to the condition of the card. If the card's really tore up and you start to lose that glossy surface coating, you're also going to increase the amount of friction that you're going to get between the two surfaces. So what else do I have? Okay, the loop test, jeweler's loop. So I wanted to do a video on the jeweler's loop, what to look for. A lot of people just say look for the rosettes. I look for a lot more than the rosettes when I look at the cards, and that's the interesting thing. You look for, you know, in the casting cost symbol, are there different dots of different colors? And in some sets there are, and some sets there aren't. You know, you look at the edge of the card to look to see if you have that blue line, and sometimes it's worn down and you can't really tell, but it's worth a look anyway. It also tells you how good the card's been kept, or it tells you if it's been freshly cut. And because it's hard to get a shot through a jeweler's loop, and this is the loop that I use, I actually I went out and I bought this USB microscope, which can be used to take all these pictures. So when I do that video, I'm going to be using the USB microscope to kind of get everything across that I'm trying to say, hey, use your loop to look for this. So this is going to be another video to use a loop video. Rip test, I didn't want to actually do that because how many people actually rip their cards? It's kind of covered with the jeweler's loop and looking at the edge of the thing. Color test, that's going to require an investment of about $300 on my part. I've got to actually buy a proper portable color meter, and you put it on something and it tells you basically where in the color curve you are. And the theory would be that, you know, a counterfeit card that looks the same, it looks like it has the same color, might actually be accomplishing that color scheme through a combination of the other 3 channels, rather than the same combination that Wizards is using. So the hope would be that you can use, you can measure the color precisely and get the amount of, you know, red, yellow, blue, and then you can compare the two and you'll notice a difference between the counterfeit. But I don't know if that's actually going to work, so that's further down the road. I wanted to test with a microscope, but I think this this USB microscope is going to be about as close as I get. That's 250x. I would love to use UV vis spectroscopy to actually get a reading of the type of ink used, and I know that's going to be an option, except for the fact that I don't own one of those. But the thing is, basically, the UV vis takes a small point on the card, and then it shines a light on it, reflects it back, and it measures the type of chemical there by the vibration of the atomic bonds. And, you know, obviously pigments used in these types of machines change. And in 20 years, some of the older cards have probably changed a lot. And to be able to get an actual chemical composition of that, you know, for pieces of art, for paintings, that's commonplace. And for the real high-end stuff, that's probably where we're going. I would not be surprised if Beckett and those companies are actually looking at things like this for the really high-end stuff, because they're putting their name on saying that $30,000 Black Lotus is authentic. So that's something that I want to look at, and you know, being a chemist, I have the ability to, you know, do a better job of reading into that and trying to determine if, hey, this is just garbage. I'm reading the, you know, I'm reading the coding. But then again, that might not be bad if you just read the coding, because then the coding has to match. I'd like to look into the grain and the glare of this, and they have a tool specifically for that, which will measure the reflectivity of the surface. And that's going to be another investment if I decide to go that route. I've seen them on sale for $100 on eBay. So it's not the most expensive thing in the world, but it's definitely a one-use thing. So I'd probably buy it, use it, and then resell the thing on eBay. They're called gloss meters. So that would be yet another test that I would like to do. And basically the hope would be, with all these tests together, you know, yeah, the card might look off, but in this case you should be able to quantify and say, hey, you know, it's failing this, 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 and this. And I've got 2 more tests that I'm basically working in my back pocket in case I ever find something that passes all these other tests. But this is quite a bit of firepower to throw at any fake. And so I just made a video where I went through, you know, 3-4 tests real quick with the cards. And essentially anything coming into my collection now that's worth more than $5 gets a nice gamut of tests, because I don't want to risk starting to get fakes into my collection where I'm using these cards as references to determine if other cards are authentic. So that's kind of an overview of what I've done and where I'm going with these tests. I've mentioned it before in the comments. I think I may have mentioned it in the videos. If you have any counterfeit cards, send them my way. I'd like to get them and like to be able to use them for compares. That's the problem. I have a couple videos that I've shot where I don't have anything that actually fails the test, or I don't have anything that passes the test. And whereas I don't mind if I have nothing that passes the test, you know, I did the UV test and I really didn't have anything that failed the UV test. Everything looked good under the black, you know, the black light or the UV light. So feel free to send them my way. Contact me if you have anything like that and you want to get it out. I'd appreciate it. And other than that, hopefully I can get some more of these testings done and hopefully get some of these videos out. And I hope you enjoy these videos. You know, they're kind of all over the place. You know, I spend hours and hours and hours putting together the research into them, and then kind of a little bit scatterbrained go through everything that I've found. But, you know, the hope would be that this is something that either someone can develop a consistent test off of and kind of publish that and get that out there and get that out there as another tool, or it's something that can educate a person to say, hey, these are tells that I'm looking for to make sure that something is authentic or something's fake. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy my videos. I'm not going to ask you to subscribe because who knows what this channel is going to have on it next. The last set of videos I did was about me making stuff out of Surge, and the other ones before that were me starving myself. So I just hope you enjoy these videos. Thanks for watching.